Yes, it's me. It's me. It's the M.I.C. Craig, aka Mr. Impact, back with another special edition of TBN Chats. My guest this time is ring announcer, commentator for promotions such as Catch Pro Wrestling, TNT, Progress Wrestling, PCW in the UK, and so many more. It's Mark Adams. Mark, how are we doing?
Hello, I'm all right, thank you. I think perhaps pointing out I've commentated for Progress once is pushing it, but yes, technically I am on the WWE Network with one show.
Still more than most, so
It counts, man. It's a bucket list thing, isn't it?
Exactly. On the WWE Network, like, it's not a lot of people can say that.
I know, and it's that kind of thing, isn't it? Like when you first start setting out, I've been around a while. I think it's nudging 13 years now, and yeah, I'm not fond of bucket lists because what happens if you don't actually get to do the stuff on your bucket list? But if I had a bucket list, that would have definitely been one of the things. And there's a lot of things I've done over the last 13 years that if you'd spoken to me 13 years ago, I'd have been like, nah, that's never going to happen. And they all have, you know?
Yeah, I agree with bucket lists, they sometimes can feel like a bit of pressure, but when you achieve something you've been thinking about for years, dreaming about for years, it's a good feeling when you've accomplished something you've been trying to accomplish for so long.
Very much so. And for me, being in British wrestling has always been along those lines. I've done so many things that I never thought I'd get to see. Anything from, I don't know, interviewing Jushin Liger in Japanese to working on the camp shows, which I never thought I would do because they always use the redcoats for that. And I got to ref on some camp shows as well. And to last weekend at the Pride of the Ring show, never in a month of Sundays would I have thought that a show like that would have existed when I first started doing this kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, and of course, PCW announced that next year will be another Pride of the Ring show as well. Which,
yeah,
I mean, how important is a show like that in today's world, if you like?
To me, it's everything. I've always been out, and I was fortunate enough that I started up with a promotion that was run by an old friend of mine who knew that I was gay, and it was never even discussed, let alone an issue, you know. But a lot of other LGBT people never really had that easy access into the wrestling world, and after everything patterned, a lot of folk had talked about doing a similar show for the LGBT community. And, well, it was PCW that got to do it. There's been lots of talk. There's been 2 or 3 shows that have been talked about and cancelled. And PCW said, let's do it. Let's do it at Blackpool Pride. And let's do it this year. And so they did. And it really, really mattered to me. The footage isn't out there yet. I believe that it's going to be on a streaming site where you get a 3 months access, so it should be accessible to everybody to watch that show when it's ready. But for me, it meant so much. I know who I am. I've known who I am for a long, long time. But I came out at 23, and which is, you know, a lot later than the vast majority of people these days. And I had a little bit of catching up to do when I first started to be more comfortable with who I am. And I never plucked up the courage to go to a wrestling school because I thought people wouldn't want to wrestle. The gay guy, there would be issues. People would not want me there, and you know, I'm 43 now, and I said at the PCW show, there's a young person called Riley the MBF, who is a 19-year-old non-binary person, and they are already themselves, already on wrestling shows, already fucking smashing it. And to see something like that matters so much to me as someone who didn't learn to be a wrestler because I was scared because I'm gay. And I did get to do some great things in wrestling, and I have continued to do that for the last 13 years. But there's always that tiny little thing in the back of my head where I'm like, could you have done that? Could you have wrestled? And I eventually did go to a training school once I knew the trainer, but I was in my mid-30s by that point. And in theory, and I've only done it once, I can have a perfectly acceptable, solid 2.5-star match with someone that can carry me, in theory.
Right.
But what would have happened if I'd have been 20 and gone to a wrestling school and been able to have the courage to do that?
Yeah.
Who knows? You know, who knows? I'm only like 2 years younger than like Doug Williams, and look what he achieved in his 20s and 30s.
Yeah, I mean, see, it's talked about a lot. Is it too late at a certain point? And also, you hear, you know, for example, DDP is the main example of you start. It doesn't matter when you start; you can always become successful. But especially now, as wrestlers starting at 16, sometimes even earlier, Chantal Jordan immediately springs to mind for me. 18 years old and already smashing it, and can only get bigger from here.
Well, I was the ring announcer for Dan Maloney's first match, and he was 14 under a Super Dragon mask.
Yeah, there's so many incredible talents out there right now, and this and they haven't, and not even in their prime yet, which is kind of scary, but also very, very cool.
And I said to the young person that plays Riley, the MBF, I said, you need to just smash this business because I wasn't brave enough, and I meant it. And I'm so proud of them. And just to see, I mean, across the board, the PCW show, seeing people in the LGBT community celebrated with a gigantic crowd in an iconic venue. I mean, if you've been to Blackpool and you've been to a gay club, you've been to Funny Girls. It is so iconic. And there are the venues that you work at and you have to pinch yourself. The venues that you've been to and seen your heroes, you know. So, for example, I've done a show at the Ritz in Manchester where I saw Alice Cooper. I've been to the Electric Ballroom where I saw Rage Against the Machine. And finally, I've been to Funny Girls where, well, I'm not going to tell you what I did at Funny Girls.
Okay. Obviously, you mentioned what you've just done. Take you back to the very start. How did you first discover wrestling? Like, and was there anyone in particular when you first saw it, you thought, yeah, I'm into it because they are such a great character. They're really entertaining. I want to be a wrestling fan. I want to be a fan of this person.
So I'm that old that late 80s, early 90s WCW Worldwide on ITV on a Saturday afternoon was my first access to wrestling. And my brother and I were in a youth orchestra together. And so we go to youth orchestra, we go to Wolverhampton town centre at the time. We go to Wolverhampton town centre, we do a bit of shopping with our mum, and then we would be clock watching to make sure we got home for 2 p.m. to see WCW Worldwide. We didn't have a video at that point, you know, a VHS recorder. And so our Saturdays revolved around these three things. And we both just loved it. And there were a lot of very big characters in the WCW at the time. But the two that stuck out to me the most were Ron Simmons and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. And Ricky the Dragon Steamboat was my absolute favourite wrestler. And every time he wasn't on WCW that week, I was like, where's Ricky? Where's Ricky the Dragon? And it just kind of built from there. My brother's best friend growing up was, well, the man that plays Trent Seven. And we used to video swap. We're both old enough that it was genuinely swapping VHS videos, legal or otherwise, that we'd acquired. And it kind of just built from there. I vividly remember that Trent got some access to ECW stuff. And that was just a huge game changer. Masato Tanaka versus Mike Awesome. Those matches blew my mind. And it just escalated. And one of my, possibly my mantra in life, particularly now I tend to be the oldest swinger in the locker room every time, is growing old is compulsory, growing up is not. And I just never grew out of wrestling, and I've continued to love it for my whole life.
Yeah, I think it's a good mantra to have, especially with what's going on in the world. Growing up, not the best idea. So that's a very good mantra to have, I think.
So it certainly suits me.
Yeah. So when did you first realize that wrestling was something you could do? As in, you can go to a training school, you can go to shows in the UK. When did you first realize that was the possibility?
So I moved to Manchester in 1997 for university, and not long after that, the Future Shock Training School was advertising, do you want to learn to be a wrestler? And that was the moment where I bottled it, where I wasn't brave enough. So I knew from that point on. And it was only really because, well, Trent Seven offered me an opportunity to ring announce for his promotion a fair few years later that I ever got involved. And from that point, I did eventually end up having met the person running the Future Shock Training School at the time. Having met him, I did eventually go there in my mid-30s and learn a little bit.
Yeah, it's something that I've always thought about and just never gone through. Like, I'm only about 40 minutes away from the Kamikaze Pro Dojo, and they've had some of the very best come up on the scene currently come out their training school. It's always something, yeah, and it's just always, I guess, with wrestling training and just it's something you just have to go for if you're passionate about it. It's the same with anything really. If you're passionate about it, you've got to go for it. You've got to give it whatever you can.
So for me, by the time I got there, like I say, maybe I could have Diamond Dallas Paged it and really pushed it, gone to the gym like every day and trained every day. But the reality is I'd already found my niche. I was already a reasonably well-known ring announcer, and from that point, around that point at the same time, I started to branch out into commentary. And because of my age at the time, I'd already got the gravitas you needed to be a ring announcer and a commentator. I'd already got my niche. So yeah, absolutely, a training school is for people who are very much focused on becoming a wrestler, making their livelihood out of it, making it their full-time job. But for me, I very quickly realized it was more just a social thing and also a fitness thing. I was in the shape of my life when I was training with Future Shock. And
right.
I think going in knowing exactly what you want is really, really helpful, because I didn't. I had this idea of changing from a ring announcer to a wrestler, but I'd already got something special. I'd already got something that I loved, and I'd already got something that was working for me. And when I realized that, like I say, I can have a surprisingly good match as long as it's with someone who's capable. And, some of my training matches were great fun. I had this wonderful idea of being the commentator and the wrestler at the same time. No. I was blowing after about 2 moves. That you need cardio that is beyond superhuman for that gimmick. If anyone can do it, they are welcome to my idea, because it did not work for me.
I think in TNA, Booker T did try. He put a beat down on someone whilst being commentary as Black Snow. So maybe that can be taken into a more match centered thing. Who knows?
It's why stuff like Priscilla's entrance, where she does a full lip sync with dance routine, usually a death drop. I'm like, I did a lip sync, a 2-minute lip sync with her at the Pride of the Ring show. I was shattered. I could hardly ring announce for the first match, and I was like, how do you do this?
Yeah.
Cardio beyond a normal human, that.
Yeah, I mean, I can't fathom how she managed to do all that entrance and then go have a banging match afterwards. Like straight away, it's next level stuff. So as far as the commentary goes, what would you say has been your favorite style of match to call? Is it the catch can stuff? Is it the high flying cruiserweight exhibition style, or is it just a match with a real story behind it? What's your favorite style to call?
Honestly, I think because I genuinely believe that every wrestling show that's put on should have a mix of everything. You don't want 7 matches of Davey Richards versus Davey Richards clone. You don't want 7 matches that are all just comedy with no impact or anything. So honestly, as long as the card is a nice mix, I'm happy behind that commentary booth. But if you had to push me, I've always loved the high flyers ever since I was a kid. Like I say, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat was my favorite as a kid. And that progressed onto the Lucha Libre guys and Taka Michinoku when I was at university. And so, yeah, a style that I certainly enjoy watching. I genuinely don't think I have a bias on commentary, and I'm not supposed to. But I think if a style that I like to watch, it is very much the lucha, the high flyers, the cruiserweights. That's always been something I've enjoyed.
Yeah. So, what would you say makes you touched on a little bit there. What would you say makes a good commentator? Would you say, obviously, there's research going into it, and what would you say makes a good commentator?
So, a good commentator needs to be a wrestling fan. You can be incredibly charismatic and have the gift of the gab, but if you don't know the difference between, I don't know, an exploder suplex and a vertical suplex, you're never going to get anywhere. But I think there's always been a few, if people have asked, the advice I tend to give is treat the way you are in a overall across the show like a wrestler with a moveset. If you have something that you want to say, or an exclamation, let's say it's your exclamation. If you said it 3 times in a match, and then 3 times in the next match, and then 3 times in the next match, that's like having 3 pile drivers. So if you've got things you want to say, don't over egg them, because people will spot it. I'll never forget one of the first gigs I did as a commentator. It was alongside G-Man, and he pointed out afterwards, don't say my name after everything. And I was like, what do you mean? I watched the footage back. What a suplex, G-Man. Look at the size of that guy, G-Man. Something else, G-Man. Literally, comma, G-Man at the end of almost everything I said. And I was mortified because I hadn't spotted it. So that's my other tip. Watch your stuff back, because you will spot stuff that you will not spot while you're doing it.
Right. And yeah, I mean, so I had Simon Hill on previously, and I asked him the same question. So I'll ask you, what's your show day routine? Like when you wake up to get to the show, and then after, what what do you do in between the show starting, and after the show finishes? What's your like study routine?
So I strongly suspect Simon's is significantly more professional than mine. He's a machine, and I've always enjoyed working with Simon when I've had the opportunity to do so. So I didn't hear what he said, but I'm probably going to make myself look like an idiot here. It genuinely depends on what time the show starts. If it's an evening show, it's very different to a daytime show. So, perfect example, TNT run extreme shows in the evenings on a Thursday, and they run their family-friendly ignition shows just after lunch on a Sunday. My natural body clock is that I am very much a night owl. So if it's the Sunday, it's basically drag your carcass out of bed, shower, speed to Liverpool, apologise to whoever you were picking up because you're late, and whereas I'm a bit better if it's an evening show. But I have actually started like prepping the night before, so you know my suit carrier and my stuff, everything's ready. But for every show, there is always a consistency for me. There's important things. I suppose I'm going to use the word ritual, despite the fact I'm humanist. But you know, these rituals that let's go with secular rituals that get me comfortable as part of a show. I like to get changed really, really early. When I also like to get to a show a little bit earlier than it. You know, they give you a call time. I try to get there at least half an hour before that. There's a lot of work to be done as a commentator before you actually start commentating on the show. Same with ring announcing. But I do like to get there early, and I do like to get changed early. I feel more confident, more like Mark the wrestling commentator when I'm wearing the velvet jacket and the cool shirts that I would never wear anywhere else. And so I definitely would do that. And I always turn up with my 2 dinosaurs and my ring bell. The amount of shows I have turned up to where they haven't got a ring bell, I'm like,
right.
Because a lot of the time when you're commentating or ring announcing, you're the timekeeper as well, particularly on British shows. So I protect my ring bell like it's my child, because having spoken to people like T-Bone and HT Drake, they're like, yeah, I've had so many ring bells nicked, so I haven't bought a replacement. And that's why there's no ring bells, because people nick them. So no one nicks my ring bell.
Yeah.
My ring bell stays kind of like attached to my hip. But yeah, so I always have the dinosaurs and the ring bell. That's always on my table, regardless of whether I'm a ring announcer or a commentator. The dinosaurs is a story for another time, and I'm looking now. Maybe I'm not going to be able to tell that. But other than that, it is just chats with people. A lot of the time, it's nice, pleasant chats. But a lot of the time, it's how you doing? Is there anything you want me to talk about, particularly today? And if it's someone new, I'll find out whether or not they've got names for any of their moves that, I don't know. I'll never forget. I do like coming up with move names if people haven't got them. I spoke to Keith Myatt, and he started using a Stone Cold Stunner. And I said to him, Stoke Cold Stunner, because he's from Stoke. And his eyes lit up. So ever since I came up with that one, he's called it the Stoke Cold Stunner, which I love. And yeah, so it's just, it facilitates chat, to be honest with you.
Right.
Is arriving early and making sure you're getting what you need from everybody. And I always enjoy winding up people by suggesting, do you want to be from parts unknown if I'm ring announcing? But a few folk have actually said, yes, parts unknown is cool. So, yeah. But
yeah.
it's... But yeah, so it's just stuff like that, really.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed a lot. It seems to be all about preparation and then you can, if you're prepared, then you can go out. Obviously, if anything can go wrong, it's British wrestling. There's always something can just fall out of place or slip up, but it's all about being prepared.
Preparation gets easier the longer you've been doing it, and usually for me now, particularly as I kind of cherry pick where I work, I only tend to have maybe 2 or 3 max people that I've not worked with extensively before on any card that I'm working on. So it is much easier for me than it used to be, when every show there was new folk, because I was traveling the country, going to anywhere and everywhere that would employ me. Whereas that isn't the case now anymore. I have in my head a limited number of dates that I will accept, because my situation changed. I run my own business now, and a lot of my work is on Saturdays and Sundays, which obviously clashes with wrestling. So I reduced my wrestling workload because, being blunt, I make significantly more money as a humanist celebrant than I do working a wrestling show. But I like wrestling, so I'm still doing it, but with very limited dates. And I'll tell you something, the moment I told people I was doing limited dates, everybody wanted to employ me. So maybe there's another tip.
Yeah,
tell people, actually, oh, I'm not doing much anymore, and everybody will want you.
Everyone wants it, yeah. Everyone wants what they can't have. So we're near time now. I just wanna, I end every interview with the same question, because I like putting things out there into the universe and hoping they can become a reality. So in the next 3 years for you, whether it be personal, professional life, where do you want to be? Where do you see yourself in the next 3 years?
Bloody hell.
Yeah.
Honestly, I like what I have. I like being a celebrant who also gets to live the dream and do wrestling stuff, be involved in wrestling things. And I enjoy podcasting as well. Where do I see myself? I guess continuing to enjoy my work, life, wrestling, podcast, everything else balance, because I really am. And I said this to my partner after the Pride of the Ring event. Every time I think there's nothing else for me to achieve, nothing else that I want to do in wrestling, or nothing else that I can do in wrestling that is a game changer, something like that happens. It was only 3 months prior that I got to work for Progress, and I'm on the WWE network now, something I never thought I'd do. And then just 3 months later, I was on the first ever LGBTQ plus show at a major UK Pride, the first of its kind. Just 3 months later, after I thought I'd done everything that I wanted to do, everything that I thought I could achieve in wrestling. So I'm not going to say that again. I'm going to just see how everything goes. Wait for the next incredible moment that genuinely fills me with pride and joy. And I cried in the ring on Saturday, so that doesn't happen very often. So I don't know, just keep enjoying it and make sure that I get the balances of all the aspects of my life in the right place, so that everything is the way it should be for me. Sorry, I don't really think that far ahead, particularly at the moment, because I'm
Yeah, I mean, that's why I like asking that question, because you get different answers from different people. It's always interesting to see where people's goals, whether they're just happy as they are. It's always an interesting question, because it's never the same answer. So I appreciate your answer on that one. So with that, I guess we'll wrap it up. If you want to let everyone know where they can follow you, where they can find you, and where they can see you, just let everyone know watching.
Okay, if you're looking for me, I'm at Mark Adams HC on both Instagram and Twitter. I really like Twitter. I don't like Instagram. It's like Twitter on hard mode. I also have a Facebook page that I very, very rarely update, but that's just Mark Adams, wrestling ring announcer and commentator. If you want to see me do non-wrestling stuff, I have 2 podcasts, one about the Chucky horror franchise, that's called Chucky Vision, and one about Red Dwarf, which is called Shipwrecked and Comatose. They're on Spotify and stuff, so if you want to hear me talk about something completely different, find those out. If you fancy having me as your celebrant for your wedding or a naming ceremony, just look for Mark Adams Humanist Celebrant on Google. I think it's humanist.org / no, I can't remember. Just Google me. My name's Mark Adams, Humanist Celebrant, and it comes up on the top. And I am working with PCW to do some wrestling weddings. So if you're interested in having me announce a show and have your wrestling wedding at the same time, get in touch. Stephen Fludder and me, we've got everything we need. If we can turn up, put on a show, marry you, and it's going to be brilliant. Other than that, if you're looking for me in wrestling, I occasionally work for PCW, but not very often. I regularly work for Catch Pro Wrestling in Manchester and TNT in Liverpool. I do post-prod stuff for Pro Wrestling for You, and I'm currently an evil baddie in Derby. The people of Derby hate me, for Kumite as well.
There you have it. You can go check out all that. So I appreciate you coming on. You can check out our stuff here, there, everywhere: Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Spotify, and wherever else you podcast. Go check out the Mothership, Max and Jackson Jeff, every Sunday morning at 1 a.m. on twitch.tv/TNIW channel. Until next time, I've been the M.I.C. Goodbye, my friends.